There's a certain kind of woman a man can't stop thinking about, not because of how she looks or what she says, but because of how he feels around her. It's not obvious, it's not loud, but it's powerful. And most women don't even realize they hold this hidden advantage, the one thing men secretly crave more than anything else. There's a quiet kind of power that a woman holds when she makes a man feel emotionally safe. It's not loud, it's not flashy, and it's not something that gets praised in songs or celebrated in headlines, but it's the thing he remembers. It's what stays with him when he's out in the world performing, providing, pretending. Because the truth is, even the strongest men carry battles no one sees. And in a world that constantly demands him to be tough, logical, unshaken, what he secretly longs for is a place to drop the armor, not to be fixed, not to be advised, just to be held emotionally. There is nothing more desirable to a man than knowing he can show his cracks and still be respected. When a woman creates a space where a man doesn't have to over-explain his silence, where she doesn't assume the worst or take everything personally, something shifts in him. He starts to breathe differently around her. He laughs a little more loosely. He shares stories he's never told anyone. Because she's not interrogating his emotions, she's welcoming them. That's power. That's presence. And very few people know how to offer that. It's not about being a therapist. It's about being safe emotionally. And ironically, when he finds that kind of safety, that's when he starts to show up even more powerfully as a man. Not because she needs saving, but because she gave him something no one else did. The permission to be human. Emotional safety doesn't mean letting him walk all over you. It means you're grounded enough in yourself that his vulnerability doesn't shake you. You don't punish him for being soft. You admire him for being real. And the kind of woman who can receive a man in his realness without trying to mold him, change him, or protect herself from it, that woman becomes unforgettable. Men don't forget the ones who saw them clearly and stayed kind. They don't forget the ones who didn't flinch when the mask came off, because behind every successful, charismatic, high-value man is usually someone, often a woman, who gave him a rare gift, emotional refuge. It's not about stroking his ego or becoming his emotional dumping ground. It's about being intuitive enough to know when he needs a soft place to land and confident enough to offer it without needing anything in return. That kind of energy creates trust. And when a man trusts a woman on that level, he opens parts of himself that no one else gets to see. It's not physical beauty that does this. It's not status or cleverness. It's her calm in his chaos, her steadiness in his storms. It's the way she listens without agenda. It's the way she holds silence without needing to fill it. That's the hidden power. And it's more rare and more irresistible than most people realize. There's something quietly captivating about a woman who walks into a room and doesn't need anyone to notice her, but they do anyway. It's not just because of how she looks. It's because of how she feels. Her energy speaks before she does. And the reason it's so magnetic is because she isn't chasing approval. She's not scanning the room for someone to validate her worth. She knows it already. That kind of confidence is rare, and men are drawn to it more than they'll ever admit. When a woman doesn't perform for attention or adjust her personality to be liked, it sends a message without her saying a word. I am enough, with or without your gaze. A woman who carries herself with this kind of self-assurance isn't cold, she's just full. She doesn't need to be chosen to feel valuable. She's not playing games, but she's also not bending over backwards to earn affection. That energy is powerful. It creates curiosity. Men sense that they can't impress her with surface-level charm, and that challenge, when it's real, is addictive. What he's responding to is the fact that her world doesn't revolve around how he sees her. She doesn't try to convince him of her worth, she simply embodies it. And the moment a man feels like he has to rise to her level, everything shifts. This kind of confidence doesn't come from having the perfect body or saying the right things. It comes from a deep internal place where she's already accepted herself, flaws, insecurities, all of it. And when that self-acceptance is authentic, it becomes effortless. She doesn't need to control how others perceive her. She just shows up aligned with who she is and lets that be enough. Men are used to being pursued, flattered, or impressed, but when he meets a woman who's not interested in playing that game, because she's not trying to win him, he starts wondering how to win her. And that's the shift. There's nothing more refreshing to a man than encountering a woman who radiates peace with herself, because that kind of woman isn't reactive. She doesn't cling when things feel uncertain. She doesn't try to prove her worth when he pulls back. She's not waiting to be completed. She's whole already. And men sense that instantly. It gives them something to respect, not just desire. A woman like that becomes a mirror. She reflects back to him where he stands. Is he confident enough to stand beside her? Is he secure enough to not be needed but still be chosen? When a woman holds her own emotional ground without demanding constant reassurance or adapting her entire identity to fit his preferences, she becomes a lighthouse in a world full of noise. And that glow isn't something you can fake. It's real, it's rare, and it leaves an impression long after she's gone. Because it's not what she says or does, it's who she is when no one's watching. That's the power men never see coming, but never forget. There's a difference between having high standards and weaponizing them, and men can feel the difference instantly. What they crave, what pulls them in deeper than looks or chemistry, is a woman whose standards are rooted in self-respect, not control. She doesn't demand to be treated like a queen. She lives like one. She doesn't need to spell out her boundaries with a lecture. Her energy does the talking, and that's what's so attractive. When she has graceful standards, she's not walking around with a checklist, judging every move he makes. She's simply living by what she knows she deserves, and quietly walking away from anything that doesn't align. What most people get wrong is thinking standards mean being difficult or unapproachable. But a woman with graceful standards isn't cold. She's warm, open, even soft, but she's also clear. She knows the difference between someone who's genuinely interested and someone who's just bored or lonely. She doesn't entertain confusion. If he's inconsistent, she doesn't overanalyze. If he flakes, she doesn't chase. If he crosses a line, she doesn't explode. She exits, and the way she does it, with calm, without drama, sticks with him because it's rare, it's powerful, and it forces him to take her seriously without her saying a word. This kind of woman doesn't shame a man for falling short, but she also doesn't make excuses for it. She holds space for someone who wants to show up fully, but she won't shrink herself just to keep him around. That balance, that combination of softness and strength is magnetic. It challenges a man, not in a combative way, but in a way that makes him want to step up. Because being with her isn't about control, it's about alignment. She's not trying to force anyone to stay. She's just creating an environment where only the right kind of energy survives. And that silently weeds out everything that isn't meant for her. Men aren't inspired by a woman who bends over backwards to be accepted. They're inspired by the woman who inspires them to stretch, to grow, to reach higher. And that only happens when she's not afraid to walk away if the energy isn't matched. There's something deeply attractive about a woman who doesn't punish you, but also doesn't pretend she's okay with behavior that disrespects her. She doesn't need to shout her worth. She embodies it in the way she responds, the way she disengages, and the way she never tries to convince someone to love her better. That quiet dignity isn't intimidating, it's alluring. Graceful standards are not ultimatums, they're simply reflections of how deeply a woman values herself. And that value doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be consistent. The more consistently she lives by her truth, the more unforgettable she becomes. Because men don't remember the woman who made it easy for them to slack. They remember the one who made them want to be better, not because she demanded it, but because her presence made anything less feel unworthy. A woman who can tune into a man's emotional world without him having to spell it out holds a kind of power that most people never notice, but every man feels. It's in the way she senses his mood before he finds the words for it himself. It's the quiet awareness she carries, the way she listens between the lines, and the patience she offers when he doesn't yet know how to articulate what he's going through. That's something akin to what our guide noted on Nicola's watch. When his entire watch have to work, the way she bids him up, he says it's the watch doesn't ring. It's like a ghost. This kind of emotional intuition is not loud or dramatic. It doesn't come from trying to fix him or interrogate him. It's simply a presence, a stillness that makes him feel understood in ways he didn't even know he needed. When a man is emotionally attuned to a woman like that, something in him begins to soften. He may not be ready to open up right away, but he can feel the difference. He can feel that she isn't waiting for the perfect answer. She's paying attention to what his silence says. He knows she's not trying to change him, but she's also not blind to what's underneath the surface. That balance is rare. It's rare because most people either ignore emotional cues or overreact to them. But the woman who sees deeply without judgment, who notices when his energy dips or when his words don't match his tone, creates a space that feels sacred. She becomes someone he can breathe with. It's not about reading minds or always being right. It's about reading vibes, about trusting what her instincts are telling her and showing up with presence instead of pressure. When a woman can say, "I'm here if you want to talk," and genuinely mean it, with no timeline, no hidden agenda, she becomes a kind of emotional anchor. And men are not used to that. They're used to being told to be stronger, to snap out of it, or to toughen up. So when someone finally shows up who doesn't need them to be anything but human, it disarms them in the best possible way. Men aren't always taught how to express vulnerability. Sometimes they don't even recognize it in themselves. That's where this kind of emotional intuition becomes so powerful. A woman who doesn't over-question or fill the silence with noise can often reach him more than 100 conversations ever could. Her calm creates a path for him to come toward her, not because he's being pulled, but because he finally wants to. He feels safe in the presence of someone who understands the things he doesn't have words for yet. That's not something he finds easily, that's not something he forgets. What draws him in is not her ability to solve his problems, but her willingness to sit with him in the moment without fear. That stillness, that emotional fluency, becomes the very thing that builds connection and trust. And the more a woman owns that superpower, the more he feels like he can bring his full self. Not just the strong, capable version, but the real one, to her world. There is something magnetic about a woman who is deeply in love with her own life. A woman who doesn't wait for a relationship to begin before she starts living fully. She's not sitting around waiting to be rescued from boredom or loneliness. She's too busy creating, growing, exploring. She has her own dreams, her own passions, her own moments of joy that exist outside of anyone else. That doesn't mean she's closed off or unavailable. It means she's already full. She's not seeking a man to complete her story. She's inviting someone into a story that's already rich with purpose. And that kind of energy is irresistible. Men notice this instantly, even if they don't always know how to explain it. There's a different glow to a woman who isn't performing for attention but simply radiating from within. Her energy is focused inward, not in a selfish way, but in a grounded, self-respecting way. She wakes up in the morning with things to do, goals to chase, books to read, experiences to have, and when she speaks about her life, there's a light in her eyes. That light is not dependent on who's texting her or how interested a man seems. It comes from being lit up by her own existence. And a man who values depth and connection will want to get closer to that kind of light, not to dim it, but to bask in it. This kind of passion doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't mean she's always on the go or chasing 10 projects at once. It might show up in the way she tends to her creativity, the care she gives to her health, the quiet joy she feels when she's learning something new. She knows how to be with herself without feeling empty. She's comfortable in her own company, and because of that, when she invites someone else in, it feels like a privilege, not a lifeline. That shift changes everything, because now she's not tolerating inconsistency just to avoid being alone. She's not abandoning her path to merge with someone else's. She's choosing partnership from a place of fullness, not fear. A man who encounters this energy will often find himself wanting to rise to meet her, not because she demands it, but because something about her makes him want to bring more to the table. She doesn't need to chase him. Her life is already moving. If he wants to be part of it, he knows he needs to keep up. That creates an entirely different dynamic. It's not about control. It's about inspiration. She becomes the standard by which he measures other women, not because of how she looks, but because of how she lives. And when a woman lives with that kind of passion and purpose, she becomes unforgettable. Even when she enters into a relationship, she doesn't lose herself in it. She makes room for love without erasing the parts of her life that make her feel alive. And that balance, loving someone deeply while continuing to love her own life fiercely, is rare. It keeps the relationship dynamic, exciting, and rooted in mutual respect. She doesn't need constant attention or reassurance because she already feels secure in herself. And when she gives attention, it's intentional, it's real. Men feel the difference. They feel that she's not giving love out of desperation. She's giving from overflow. That kind of woman becomes a man's peace and his fire. She's the calm he can trust and the spark that keeps things alive. And it's not because she's trying to be those things. It's because she's living so fully that simply being in her presence reminds him of what it means to be alive too. There's a powerful difference between being mysterious and being manipulative. Real mystery doesn't come from playing games or withholding affection. It comes from depth. A woman who carries herself with mystery, rooted in authenticity, draws people in without even trying. It's not about acting like she doesn't care, and it's not about creating distance on purpose. It's that she lives in a way that shows there's more to her than what's on the surface. She isn't immediately an open book because her life, her thoughts, and her emotions are layered, and that natural depth makes a man want to keep turning the pages. Men are deeply attracted to the feeling that there is still more to discover. Not in a frustrating or confusing way, but in a way that keeps them curious. When a woman reveals herself slowly, not because she's hiding, but because she's thoughtful with who gets access to her inner world, she builds a kind of value around her presence. She doesn't rush to share every story, or explain every detail of her past. She lets connection unfold naturally, and that pacing creates a kind of respect. A man feels like getting to know her is a journey, not a transaction. And when he realizes that not everyone gets to see all of her, he understands that her vulnerability is a privilege, not a given. This kind of mystery isn't about silence or being emotionally closed off. It's about emotional maturity. She knows who she is, and she doesn't need to seek constant validation by oversharing or over-explaining. When she speaks, there's weight to her words. When she listens, it's with presence. She isn't trying to impress, she's just being real. And that realness has texture. It's not flat or predictable, it's layered with curiosity, with thought, with stories that haven't all been told yet. That energy makes a man lean in. It makes him want to earn the right to know her deeper. She doesn't need to chase or perform because her authenticity already sets her apart. There's something quietly compelling about a woman who doesn't hand over her whole identity the moment she's liked. She doesn't use mystery as a tool to manipulate. She simply lives in a way that keeps unfolding. Every conversation doesn't reveal everything. Every moment isn't filled with constant availability. She has her own world, her own thoughts, her own life. And because of that, she can offer connection without losing herself in it. That balance between openness and self-containment is magnetic. It makes her feel unpredictable in the best way. Like there's always more beauty, more depth, more soul just under the surface. A man who meets a woman like this will often find himself thinking about her, even when she's not around. Not because she's playing hard to get, but because being around her feels different. He doesn't know everything about her, and that unknown doesn't frustrate him, it captivates him. It makes him want to keep showing up, keep proving himself worthy of more access, more time, more pieces of her story. The mystery keeps him invested. The authenticity keeps him grounded. That combination is rare. She doesn't rely on tactics or rules to keep his attention. She relies on truth, on depth, on knowing that her life, her heart, her presence carry value. And not everyone gets to access all of it right away. She knows that what's truly beautiful doesn't need to be displayed all at once. That kind of quiet confidence, the ability to show up fully while still holding space for sacred parts of herself, is what creates lasting intrigue. Not because she's trying to be mysterious, but because she is authentically herself in a world that keeps asking her to perform. And that is what men desire more than anything they can name. The most powerful thing about a woman isn't what she wears, how she looks, or even what she says. It's how she makes a man feel. And when that feeling is rooted in emotional safety, feminine confidence, graceful standards, deep intuition, passion for her own life, and a quiet, authentic mystery, she becomes unforgettable. Not because she's trying to be, but because she's tapped into a level of self-awareness and emotional depth that most people never reach. She doesn't chase love, she attracts it. She doesn't force connection, she allows it to unfold. And the men who come across a woman like that don't just see her as someone they desire, they see her as someone they want to keep showing up for. Because she doesn't demand anything, but she inspires everything. That is her hidden power, the one men long for, even when they don't fully understand it. And once they've felt it, they never quite forget it.